The rarefied air in Aspen has a certain quality to it.
The 1% love it here. Billionaires love to hang out with billionaires.
It's the best place in the world to live.
But even here, there are shadows lurking.
There was a cycle of drama involving these two women.
My glass is empty.
They went from being equals and friends to almost master and slave.
Finding their way into our most sacred of sanctuaries.
I could detect an odor that I knew was a dead body, just from experience.
When death comes knocking, no one is safe. In Aspen, Colorado, every day feels special. But then again, this is a very special place.
It's a unique place to live. You smell the air, you look at these incredible mountains. There's still a lot of freedom that comes with it.
And it's this magic that draws a world-class crowd of the rich and famous.
The 1% love it here. Billionaires love to hang out with billionaires.
You have the movie stars coming in, followed by the rock stars. Aspen being one of the most attractive places probably on the planet, at least if you have money.
The natural beauty is also a siren song for lost souls.
It's a place where misfits come to fit in.
Kathy Carpenter has lived most of her adult life here. She works in a bank downtown. She also has a part-time job as a personal assistant. On February 26, 2014, she checks on her boss, who's just returned from Australia.
Hey, Gaby. Hey, sweetie.
Inside, nothing looks amiss.
Anybody home?
But she senses that something is not quite right.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
The dog hadn't been fed. It was clearly something was wrong. She did say she smelled an odor.
The smell gets stronger and more powerful as Kathy approaches the bedroom.
The closet didn't have any doorknob, it was just a deadbolted door.
The key, which always hangs from this lock, is missing.
She has an extra key, so she decides to go get her key, which takes her probably 20, 30 minutes to make the round trip.
At first glance, nothing seems out of the ordinary.
A pile of linen is what it initially looked like.
It's what's underneath the pile that sends Kathy into a panic.
That's when she became hysterical.
911, can I help you?
Help me. Oh, my God, help me, please, please.
What's the address of the emergency?
Oh, my friend, I found my friend in the closet and she's dead,
She's screaming on the phone that there's a body in the closet.
Oh, my God!
And the dispatcher's trying to get more information out of her, but Kathy's appears to be pretty incoherent.
Terrible smell, there's something wrong.
She's told to pull over on her way towards Aspen and wait for the police to contact her.
We did take her to the hospital, and she was hysterical enough to be sedated.
Police speed to the chalet Kathy has just fled.
When I arrived on scene, there was a handful of deputies there.
Initially, the bedroom seems almost as orderly as the rest of the house. Almost.
There really wasn't anything out of place. It didn't look like there had been a violent confrontation. The place wasn't ripped apart. There wasn't blood on the floor. There wasn't blood on the bed clothings.
A closer examination reveals a disturbing detail.
We did notice a swipe of blood on the headboard.
The mattress has been flipped.
There's a big pool of blood on the underside of the mattress.
I could detect an odor that I knew was a dead body, just from experience. It just looked like a pile of bed sheets. It looked like somebody's laundry because it was nicely piled. There was no blood on the white sheets, so it was pretty unusual. That's why it was so hard to tell that there was a body under the blanket. It was impossible to tell who was under all those blankets. And it wasn't until we started peeling back the blanket and the sheets that we started to see a white trash bag and a white towel. And that's when we could finally go, okay, yes, there's a body here.
They stop what they're doing.
We knew if we started unmasking the body any more than that, if we started removing the trash bags, we would just get evidence all over the place.
We did not open the bag unseen. We took it the way it was, put it inside a body bag.
But from the looks of it, this was no natural death, and the police are afraid they know who it is.
We got the bag to a forensic pathologist that opened it, and that's the first time we really knew it was Nancy.
The town is in shock. Nancy Pfister is a fixture in Aspen. To many, she summed up what the place was all about.
Nancy was the ultimate free spirit for Aspen, Colorado.
Nancy and her family are considered Aspen royalty. Her family developed Buttermilk Mountain, one of the very first ski resorts in Colorado.
They all grew up here, clearly with privilege, and with privilege came incredible freedom to do whatever you wanted to do.
Celebrities are attracted to Aspen for its natural beauty and grandeur. They're attracted to Nancy Pfister for the very same reason.
She was very good at hanging out with the rich and the famous, the Kennedys, the Dalai Lama, the movie stars.
There's no secret that she dated Michael Douglas and Jack Nicholson, and that would have been in the 70s.
But she was no snob.
She could charm an invitation from the royal family, or she would feel just as comfortable sitting around a campfire talking with a bunch of ski bums.
Nancy was the sort of person who, if she walked into a room and knew half the people in it, she would know the other half after 5 minutes.
That's the way it was on a chilly evening in October 2013. Nancy decides to spend the evening at a popular watering hole in downtown Aspen. A regular at the exclusive hangout, Nancy is well known to both staff and patrons.
I was there the day that she met the Stylers.
Excuse me.
They were discussing the possibility of opening a spa. Nancy overheard them.
Are you just visiting us here in Aspen?
We're hoping to move here. My name is Nancy Styler.
My name is Nancy, too.
And this is my husband, Dr. William Styler.
Oh.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to meet you. May I?
Sure, have a seat.
Thank you.
Dr. Styler was a known anesthesiologist, a professional, highly educated, highly respected in his field. And then his wife was known to grow the special flower, and she was a darling of that society and that culture.
Dr. and Mrs. Styler are new to Aspen. Until recently, they owned a $1 million home and were part of Denver's high society.
William Styler ended up getting sick, and it really caused him not to be able to work anymore as an anesthesiologist.
Aspen's, in my opinion, it's the most wonderful place to live. It's the best place in the world.
We have not been able to find anything we like.
Really? Well, if you're looking for a place, you know, my place is going to sit empty all winter. It's not a mansion, but it has fabulous views, and I have a beautiful greenhouse. And
Really?
oh,
My wife is a world-class horticulturalist.
They were coming here looking for a fresh start.
Until that fresh start takes a terrible turn.
It looked like there was a mismatch there.
Her demeanor could at times make people angry.
I had assumed maybe an overdose of some kind, but I never suspected a homicide.
are you just visiting us here in Aspen?
We're hoping to move here.
Nancy Pfister needs someone to rent out her Aspen chalet, and she thinks she may have found the perfect tenants, William and Nancy Styler.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to meet you. May I?
A few days pass before Nancy gets a call from the Stylers.
Hello? Well, hello, yes, of course I remember you. Well, yes, it is, in fact. Is there any chance you would come and see it, like, right now?
Minutes later, Dr. and Mrs. William Styler pull up to the chalet. It's exactly what they're looking for.
Hey! Come on in, the door's open, it's unlocked. Come on, come on.
It was beautiful, but not ostentatious.
So you look out on aspen trees and you look out on the snow-covered mountains, and it was beautiful.
Hi, come in. Welcome to Casa Fister. Excuse my outfit, I don't usually garden in pearls. So come, let me give you the grand tour.
For the Stylers, the allure of the chalet is almost secondary to Nancy herself.
The Stylers were looking for a way into the Aspen community to rebuild their lives. They wanted to start a spa, and so they would look at Nancy Pfister as someone that could introduce them to that clientele.
I knew we were fated to meet.
Luckily, Nancy is just as taken by the Stylers as they are with her.
So, let's get down to the ugly business of money. How does 4,000 sound?
She wanted $12,000 from them. That was $4,000 for the first month of living there, $4,000 for the last month they would live there, and a $4,000 deposit.
It's a large sum, but more than a fair price for a place on Buttermilk Mountain.
We'll take it, Nancy. We'll be happy to do so.
That's fabulous.
True to form, Nancy makes this a deal of connection, not contracts.
Meant to meet.
A handshake sufficed for her, and if a handshake sufficed for the other party, that's the way it went. I don't think there was ever a lease.
Hey.
Trusting her gut, Nancy makes a more than generous offer.
I'm not leaving for 6 weeks still, but why don't you guys move in here now? I mean, the three of us were meant to meet, so let's just accept it.
Oh, Nancy, that would be wonderful.
The move begins the very next day.
They arrived here with tons of spa equipment. They unloaded an awful lot of boxes into Nancy's garage with spa stuff. Their vision was get this spa up and running, start generating some income.
54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 6,000.
The Stylers give Nancy Pfister $6,000 in cash.
As I said, I only have half for now. The rest is coming soon.
It's $12,000 they were supposed to pay. They didn't have the money up front, so they were going to pay the $6,000 up front and then pay the rest of the $6,000 at some time. It was a little unclear, and then pay $4,000 a month.
But living together means getting to know each other a little too well.
I might be interested.
The Stylers were relatively conservative people. Nancy Pfister was probably a little bit on the bohemian side. So she would wander around the house naked in front of the Stylers, which threw Nancy Styler off.
It looked like there was a mismatch there, but Again, they seem to mesh.
Hiccups aside, the friendship grows in leaps and bounds. 2 weeks after the Stylers move in, Nancy takes them to a Halloween party and introduces them to Aspen's elite.
Nancy was a very good hostess to them. She had dressed them with costumes from her own closet.
When you first have some new people move in, you want to kind of celebrate and make them feel comfortable and introduce them to your friends, and that's kind of the atmosphere it was.
Nancy also introduces them to Kathy Carpenter.
Well, Kathy Carpenter is an interesting lady. She, by her own means, would never have entered into the Aspen social circle.
I want you to meet the perfect couple that are going to rent the house for the winter. This is Dr. William Styler and his lovely wife, Nancy.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Nancy.
This is Kathy.
Kathy Carpenter.
She came from a lower socioeconomic background. Some people say that Kathy Carpenter was the personal assistant. Other people say Kathy Carpenter was a friend.
Ambiguity aside, the relationship between Kathy and Nancy is volatile.
Anytime. Thank you.
Kathy, sweetie, look. My glass is empty.
Well, it wasn't a few moments ago, was it?
There was a cycle of drama involving these two women. Different disputes where law enforcement was called and Nancy Pfister would say, well, we were into an argument and Kathy threatened to hit me and I'm afraid of her. I think Kathy is going to hurt me.
There were a few sides to Nancy. She was like a diamond, a lot of facets all over it.
Nancy could be difficult and challenging at times.
And the Stylers soon learn how true this is.
She had a strong sense of entitlement, and she worked it. She could charm anybody. She turned on the charm and people would melt.
Well, not everyone.
Darling, would you?
Nancy Styler, she'd been successful in the medical profession for decades. Someone who lived at one time in a much larger and much nicer house than Nancy Pfister had on Buttermilk Mountain, taking orders from this woman, you know, fix this, fix that, do this for me. And so very quickly, the tension started.
And the tension and resentment grow like weeds.
They went from being equals and friends to almost master and slave.
When I started seeing that come about, I knew this was deteriorating.
Welcome to Casa Fister.
Trust fund heiress Nancy Pfister has taken Dr. and Mrs. William Styler into her home.
Darling, would you?
But cracks are forming in this newfound friendship.
Thank you so much. This is like soul food to Aspenites. Or me, anyway.
Less than 3 weeks remain before Nancy Pfister leaves for Australia. For the Stylers, it can't come soon enough. They're tired of being bossed around.
Oh. Nance.
Nancy Styler came from an environment where she wasn't used to be treating like that.
It went both ways. Nancy probably would take advantage of these people to step and fetch it, and these people would use Nancy as an entree into society where they would probably not get into.
I'm going to bed. You coming?
Yeah.
The Stylers at the end, before Nancy Pfister went away, basically got in the mindset that she's leaving, she's going to Australia, we can deal with this for a couple more weeks.
Dr. Styler's getting his share of demands as well.
You guys have really hit it off. You know, I was just thinking, instead of me boarding him this year when I'm off in Australia, maybe you could look after him.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm the best one.
Oh, no, he's so easy to look after. You just open the door, you let him go. He comes when he's called.
Okay.
They went from being equals and friends to almost master and slave.
It's not just the stylers who are getting fed up with Nancy.
And I need you to make sure my passport is still valid and confirm my seat reservation as well.
Can't the stylers do any of this?
They're doing enough.
Hardly even paid their whole rent.
Oh, Kathy. Kathy, do I detect a twinge of jealousy?
Hardly.
As the friendship with Nancy Pfister falters, the bond between the stylers and Kathy Carpenter flourishes.
Nancy Styler was reportedly practicing some of her facials and some of her cosmetic treatments upon Kathy Carpenter, and they would have girl talk.
Oh, look at it. It's so dewy looking. I love it.
I mean, your skin is gorgeous. And you look beautiful.
So sweet.
Few things bond people together like a common enemy.
I hate that woman. Oh, I could just kill that woman.
Dr. Styler and his wife Nancy, along with Kathy Carpenter, found a commonality that allowed them to grow an interesting relationship. The commonality being their dislike of the treatment provided by Nancy Pfister.
It's a cross they don't have to bear for long.
Oh, that is music to my ears.
On November 16th, 2013, the pink champagne flows freely as Nancy throws herself a going-away party.
Could you put a couple more in the fridge? There's only 2 left in there.
This was a big party, and it was a celebration of Nancy spending the winter in the Southern Hemisphere, and for her to introduce the Stylers to dozens of her friends.
Cheers.
Though the party is a roaring success, the expensive champagne leaves a bitter taste in the Stylers' mouths.
Everyone have a great winter. Without me. So, how was that for a party?
It was truly something. And Nancy, can we get the money for the pink champagne you asked us to pick up for you?
Truly? Oh, come on. That's just party favors.
Favors? We paid for a crate of champagne. That's thousands of dollars, Nancy.
And it was a wonderful party. And you met some great contacts, didn't you?
The day Nancy Pfister leaves for Australia is indeed a cause for celebration. But the goodwill doesn't last long. In December, Nancy Pfister receives an email from the Stylers. They're refusing to pay rent.
They were pretty well disappointed with some of the functionality of the house. I believe the dishwasher wasn't working and some things like that. And so they were feeling like they just weren't getting the bang for their buck.
For 2 months, a flurry of angry emails crisscrosses the globe.
That evolved into some real cutting remarks that got personal after a while.
Look, go find another place to live which would be more to your financial ability to pay. Maybe a trailer down by the valley.
When we first met you, we thought our dreams had come true. Since then, your attitude towards us has seemed to change.
I have lost patience with you. I am way too old, and nobody needs to be lied to, so I feel like I've been duped.
Nancy wants the Stylers out of her house.
There was a dispute about whether the $6,000 they paid up front was a deposit or was to be used for rent. They did finally pay the $6,000 to Kathy Carpenter for the balance.
As far as Nancy's concerned, $12,000 is what the Stylers agreed to pay up front. They still owe her rent.
Nancy had quickly told them that she was going to terminate the lease sometime in February.
She was pretty forceful in her comments towards the Stylers through the emails, very threatening in her correspondence with them.
But the end of February is near, and the Stylers don't seem ready to move. They're still in the house, So are all their possessions. By this point, the Stylers are refusing to speak with Nancy directly.
Kathy was kind of in between Nancy Pfister and the Stylers.
Kathy, what is it?
So it falls on Kathy to deliver the news.
I'm only telling you this because you won't talk to her. I didn't want to be the one to have to tell you. I have a message from Nancy. Nancy's on her way home. You have to move everything out before she gets here. She's really mad.
It would have been very unpleasant for the Stylers. At the same time, I suspect she had a perfect right to be supremely pissed off at the situation.
How long do we have?
4 days.
A 4-day deadline that will drive the Stylers to desperation.
He was even making suicidal statements.
I have nothing left to live for.
There's this note being placed on the residence, basically telling people to stay away.
Having waited months for rent that never comes, Nancy Pfister decides to evict the Stylers.
I have a message from Nancy.
She tells them she's flying home and they have just 4 days to be out of the house. The very same day Kathy tells them they have to leave, Dr. William Styler makes an appointment with a loan officer. Seems their displays of wealth are just a facade.
William Styler ended up in a dispute with his partners in the medical office. They went to court, and it sounds like the Stylers ended up with basically a crooked lawyer down in Denver, and the lawyer ended up bilking him out of about $600,000 in cash.
In fact, the Stylers are broke and desperate. But banks aren't in the business of performing acts of charity.
At this point in his life, he really didn't have anything for collateral, and so he was turned down for the loan, and he was quite disheartened by this.
I have financial problems. Financial problems with my landlady. If something were to happen to Nancy Pfister, it would be the best for everyone involved. I have nothing left to live for.
It scared the bank personnel enough that they actually reached out to helplines looking to see what they should do, what action they could take.
3 days later, the couple checks into a hotel just 20 minutes outside Aspen town limits.
The Aspen is just a regular hotel. It's a more moderately priced hotel for Basalt, probably comparable to a Holiday Inn. Not a bad place.
But not the sort of place the Stylers thought they'd be starting their new life. And half of that new life remains in Nancy's chalet. Nancy Pfister is already en route as the Stylers head back to the chalet to spend the day frantically packing. It's a bigger job than they anticipated.
The Stylers actually did the best they could. It's impossible to move a house full of goods within 4 days. It just can't be done.
On February 22, 2014, Kathy Carpenter picks up Nancy at the airport.
It's good to be home.
Though thrilled to finally be home, once through the door, Nancy's mood flips like a light switch.
What? They were only able to move small loads. All of the spa equipment, all the things that the Stylers were planning to use to start their new life was still in that residence.
But Kathy, you shouldn't have.
The Stylers have left pink champagne chilling on ice.
To Nancy from the Stylers.
To Nancy, it's literally the least they could do.
Well, let me tell you, this bottle is costing me thousands of dollars. And they're gonna have to pay me every cent they owe me before they get any of this stuff back.
Kathy spends the night catching up with Nancy.
Cheers, welcome home.
On Sunday afternoon, she meets with the Stylers to deliver a list of Nancy's demands.
What Nancy Pfister was saying was, unless I get that $14,000, you don't get your possessions in my house.
Outrageous.
Kathy returns to the chalet later that day.
How'd they take it?
Not good. You really pissed them off. They're gonna call a lawyer.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm more pissed off than they are. Trust me. We need another bottle. Would you mind? Get a glass.
The all-weekend slumber party continues. Late that night, Nancy sends a text to her friend Bob.
When Nancy got back from Australia, she texted me, "We got to get together. There's a party Tuesday night we should go to."
It's the last time he or anyone hears from Nancy.
Carpenter left Monday morning and did put a do not disturb, knowing that Nancy Pfister would probably sleep for a long time.
Basically telling people to stay away.
The sign is still on the door the next day when the Stylers arrive to complete their move. Armed with their lawyer's advice, they're ready to do battle over their things. To the Stylers' relief, Nancy Pfister is nowhere to be found. But something catches the attention of the Stylers.
It stinks in here.
Does it?
It's awful.
Nancy Styler herself talked about a strange smell being in the house.
That doesn't affect Dr. Styler. He lost his sense of smell in an accident when he was a child. Nancy Styler tracks the terrible smell, which seems to be coming from the closet. It's locked. The smell behind the locked door is just one of the reasons for the Stylers to leave the chalet behind.
Good riddance.
Nancy Styler sends a text to Kathy Carpenter saying they haven't seen any sign of Nancy Pfister for days. And there was a statement from Nancy Styler to Kathy Carpenter about, well, I wonder if she just took off, if she's killed herself.
Kathy feels obliged to check in and then makes her gruesome discovery. Who killed Nancy Pfister? No one looks innocent.
Initially, the suspect pool was pretty wide.
Gonna have to follow us to the station?
What was going on in the interviews were a lot of disflection, a lot of smoke and mirrors, not answering questions.
The threats took a little bit more of an ominous meaning.
Aspen heiress Nancy Pfister has been found brutally murdered. Police have suspects, but they lack a murder weapon and enough evidence to charge anyone. Only hours after discovering Nancy Pfister's body, Kathy Carpenter is questioned.
How well did you know Nancy Pfister?
She was my best friend.
Do you know anyone who'd want to hurt her?
Well, people talk. I know people who kind of said they wanted her dead. And Nancy Styler is one of them.
She had told us the Stylers had made some vague threats against Nancy Pfister.
Oh, I could just kill that woman.
The threats took a little bit more of an ominous meaning since we had a dead body in the house.
It's enough to get a warrant. The very next morning, over in Basalt, the Stylers get a rude awakening in their hotel room.
We knocked on their hotel room at 5 o'clock in the morning. Nancy Styler answered the door, and William Styler was still in bed.
Mrs. Styler, you're gonna have to follow us to the station?
We caught them by surprise. They were pretty shocked to see us at the door.
Dr. and Mrs. Styler are interrogated separately.
I know you threatened to kill Nancy Pfister.
I was angry. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one in town who ever said that.
Nancy Styler also told us how there were a lot of people in town that would make the same kind of threats or be angry with Nancy Pfister also.
I'm not going to say anything else until I have a lawyer next to me. End of story.
About 2.5 hours into my interview with Nancy Styler, she invoked her right to have a lawyer present, so as soon as she said that, we stopped the interview with her.
Next door, her husband is being asked very similar questions.
I'm thinking you know way more than you're letting on.
Come on. Look at me. Who do you take me for?
William Styler was saying that, he couldn't hurt a fly. Why would he do this? He's too weak.
After being interviewed for 12 hours, Dr. Styler is released, along with his wife.
All right. You're free to leave.
The investigation hits a dead end. But 2 days after the body is found, a stunning event changes everything.
I was exhausted, and I left my undersheriff in charge. Within a couple of hours of me going home, he calls and he says, "We have the most amazing break we could imagine."
That very morning, just a few hundred yards away from the Stylers' hotel, a city worker in Basalt is looking for illegally dumped garbage.
He opens up this trash bag to take a look to see if it was inappropriate or illegal dumping.
It's an evidentiary jackpot.
The treasure trove includes items with Nancy Pfister's name on them, including a boarding pass, a vehicle registration for a Jaguar, and that Jaguar was owned by William and Nancy Styler.
The real prize is at the bottom of the bag.
There was a hammer with blood on it. If that trash had been emptied by somebody who was not as diligent, I don't think we would have ever found this.
Results from the lab soon confirmed the blood is Nancy Pfister's, and also revealed DNA traces on the hammer handle, belonging to none other than Dr. William Styler. William and Nancy Styler are charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
The Stylers are arrested on March 3rd, and the police continue to really push Kathy Carpenter.
Soon, detectives stumble upon a very interesting fact.
We learned that Kathy had gone into Nancy's safe deposit box and removed about $6,000 worth of cash and jewelry from the safety deposit box.
Kathy Carpenter is taken in for questioning.
What about the safety deposit box? It seemed prudent. You took money and jewelry out of a safety deposit box to keep it safe? Yeah. You never know.
She explained that she was taking the jewelry for preservation's sake for Nancy's daughter, Juliana, and she took the cash for the same reason.
You have the right to remain silent. Please stand.
The detectives aren't buying it. Kathy Carpenter is also arrested on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
After the arrest, nobody said much. They were locked down by their attorneys.
And the silence persists for months.
These people remained in jail, remained in custody pending the preliminary hearing. Approximately 2.5, maybe 3 months.
We were preparing for the long haul of a trial, and almost out of the blue, Mr. Styler says, I'm ready to talk.
I'm the one you want. Me. Do you want me to tell you what really happened? I have one condition. My wife. I wanted to be released. She did nothing to Fister.
Dr. Styler wanted his wife to be exonerated from any involvement in the crime whatsoever.
The deal is made.
So, what do you want to tell us?
I did it. I murdered Nancy Pfister, and I acted alone.
William Styler ended up telling us that on the Monday after Nancy Pfister returned,
I went there in the morning.
He went up to the house and basically figured, hey, last chance, I'm going to try and reason with this woman.
There was a note on the door that said, "Do not disturb. Nancy's sleeping."
Nancy? He just walked in, because if he had knocked on the door, she wouldn't have heard it on the upstairs. The house was just too big for that.
And again, I called out.
Nancy!
Got no reply. Went up the stairs. I called out her name again. Nancy? And she didn't reply. I didn't realize at the time that she had earplugs in.
And there she was, vulnerable, helpless, and the threat could be removed immediately. I could rid myself of this problem once and for all by killing her.
He basically just decides he's going to take care of the problem and gets a hammer from inside the house.
I went, got the hammer, came back, and struck her in the head with the hammer.
It was unlikely that she would regain consciousness at all, but to ensure that, I hit her again in the front of the head. Then I step back and what the hell have I done? What do I do now?
Having committed the murder, Dr. Styler now covers it up.
He places Nancy Pfister's body in a fetal position and uses an extension cord to wrap the body up tight because he needed to make the body small.
I took a plastic bag and pulled it down over her head and used the drawstring ties to tie it snugly around her neck. I did want to try to contain the blood.
Dr. Styler then covers the body in layers of plastic bags and sheets.
Grab the sheet, pull her a foot or so, reposition myself, pull her another foot. I was able to do that. So I did pull her into the closet. I closed the door, locked it, took the key, and I presume put it in my pocket. I want you to know that I acted alone. Neither my wife nor Kathy Carpenter had anything to do with the death of Nancy Pfister.
After his confession, we did file to dismiss his wife's case with prejudice. That means we could not refile it.
All charges against Kathy Carpenter are also dropped.
Kathy Carpenter had never conspired with the Stylers to murder Nancy Pfister.
On June 20th, 2014, William Styler is given a 20-year prison sentence for second-degree murder.
His sentence is basically a life sentence. He is not getting out of jail.
On August 6th, 2015, a year after going to prison, he hangs himself in his cell. He was 67. The moment he brought down that hammer, he didn't just kill Nancy Pfister, he ended an era.
She epitomized, to a certain extent, what Aspen was all about.
Community lost a free spirit, a spirit that really is, for the most part, gone in our community. I really miss Nancy and her quirkiness. She was full of love. She was a caring, compassionate person, full of wanderlust and seeing the world and living life to the fullest. That's how I remember Nancy.